Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is back with us. We're very happy about that. Welcome back, Mr. Secretary. I hope your 2024 is off to a great year.
It has been. Pray that yours has, and all your listeners as well. It's good to be with you, Hugh.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. There's a story out this morning. Administration officials watered down Kamala Harris' Gaza speech before delivery. The original draft was harsher on Israel about the dire humanitarian situation and the need for more aid. As you look at so-called American diplomacy vis-a-vis Israel's war of survival, what are your thoughts about its coherence and its purpose?
Well, it's been a mess with respect to the Middle East for the last 3 years. They have fundamentally misunderstood the problem set, Hugh. The problem set isn't that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is led by a pariah. It's not that Israel is conducting a war of aggression. It is that the Iranian regime is attempting to undermine all of the prosperity and all the peace that we had built out during the 4 years of the Trump administration. And so you see the result. Missiles being fired at our young servicemen in the Red Sea, service members killed in the Middle East by strikes from the Iranians, and now Americans continue to be held hostage in Gaza. It has upended the basic order that we had begun to build out, and dangerous for Israel, dangerous for the Gulf Arab states, and dangerous for us as well, Hugh.
What I would love to hear is the American leadership make an articulate and expansive report on why we support Israel and why they have to win to get relief to Gaza. Do you agree with that perspective that we really need? I mean, Joe Biden's not capable of a really good speech, but he could try at least to deliver the basic message that Hamas is evil, Israel is good, and the only way to save Gaza is to get Israel in command of the entire strip. Agree or disagree, Mr. Secretary?
That is the right conclusion and the right argument as well. I can't imagine President Biden or Vice President Harris making that kind of definitive remarks about the pathway towards what is in America's best interest and Israel's best interest. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they do it. In the end, the crushing of Hamas is necessary for peace and prosperity in the region.
Now, you're an astute observer of politics. You were, of course, first in your class at West Point. You're a Harvard Law School trained lawyer. You see what's going on with lawfare. Are you worried that lawfare is undermining our ability to tell our allies to conduct elections fairly and not to imprison their opponents?
Deeply worried. We all saw the decision from yesterday, 9-0, when Justice Sotomayor comes out in a way that is consistent with my legal analysis. You know that politics has trumped a basic understanding of the Constitution. So I am worried about it. The scale of these attacks, the absurdity of some of these attacks suggests to folks around the world watching that this looks like a country that they don't know. The deep 250 years of rule of law in the United States is at jeopardy because of these domestic political efforts to undermine our democratic system. And I do worry about our elections. We're gonna all go. We got big day today, Super Tuesday. All around the country, we got big elections just a few months off. Absentee ballots and the process and the manner in which they're handled is something that we have to make sure we get right, so every voter knows that their guy, their gal won, or their guy or their gal didn't, and that has not been the case in these handful of last elections.
Now, Mr. Secretary, I believe the former president is also going to be the next president, and I try and be objective about this, but I do believe our president's infirmity is impossible to hide, and his vice president's extremism is impossible to hide. You agree with my assessment about that?
I do. I take no joy in it. I want President Biden to be successful, but we can all see, we can all observe that this is not working for the American people. The simple example that we all see every day is the invasion across our southern border. A basic rule of law needs to be upheld. To the previous question, Hugh, when I travel around the world, people see what's going on at our southern border. They ask, what is going on? That no country would allow millions of people to come into their nation unlawfully, unregulated, unvetted every single month, month on month. This is dangerous, and the world is watching to see if America is prepared to do the basic blocking and tackling required to make sure that America will be successful.
In the 62 years,
they want us to lead.
They do want us to lead. In the 62 years that Ellis Island was open, 12 million immigrants came through in 62 years, and I think that is noble. They were vetted. They were held in quarantine if necessary. None of that is happening. But I'm going to drill down from the 10 million illegals probably come across the border since Biden to the 45,000 Chinese nationals that have been encountered. That's the term of choice at the DHS right now at the border, which is so far above what happened under your team's administration of the border and President Trump's. It's startling. It's stunning. It's a bit scary. What do you think is going on there, Mr. Secretary?
So Hugh, the number is absolutely staggering. We were less than 1,000 during our time of Chinese nationals coming across the border. They're now ticking along at hundreds a month. It's also the composition of those coming across. These are mostly non-family, single males, 18 to 30. You know this. We've talked about China so many times. The Chinese Communist Party has a deep plan. The chance that these folks are randomly appearing at our southern border, that these folks are all economic migrants or asylum seekers, is precisely zero. The Chinese Communist Party knows deeply what is taking place. And if you add that to the money laundering that the Chinese Communist Party is doing with the cartels, the movement of fentanyl, you now have a Chinese Communist Party effort on our southern border that is intentional and at scale and could, if permitted to continue, put enormous risk on the United States of America.
We do not get the breakdown on Russians and Iranians coming across the border, but I view the iron triangle of China as the senior partner with Russia and Iran as their junior partners as pretty much soldered together. Is that a correct view of the world, Mr. Secretary?
It is, and I would add, if permit two junior partners into the FIRB, the Venezuelans and the North Koreans, I think you would have the entire partnership identified. And you can see it with what's going on in Venezuela with Russians and Chinese officials. You can see that in Cuba too. You can see it with North Korea providing munitions to the Russians so that they can kill kids in Ukraine. This is a concerted effort by those who despise the very nature of our republic. And if we treat them singly, if we treat them as one-offs, if we don't see what's happening in the Middle East, in Israel, as connected to what's happening in Europe today in Ukraine, then we will make a fundamental mistake in understanding the global threat that is presented.
Mr. Secretary, you're on a lot of lists for being SecDef or Vice President or back at Secretary of State. Would you ever not tell the President you were going in for surgery for 3 days? That was Lloyd Austin. You've been the Secretary of State, but it's the same, the big three, AG, State, and Defense. Can you imagine that happening under Trump 1?
No, I can't imagine. First of all, we were all communicating with the President, not every day, but most days. Can't imagine that long a gap in communication between the President of the United States and Secretary of Defense, and nor can I imagine making the intentional decision to say, I'm going to hide this from my boss. You talk about being on a lot of lists. I'm on a list at home to take the trash out and all kinds of things, Hugh. But communication sharing where the person who's in touch and in charge of the nuclear codes, not sharing that with their partner in holding on to those codes is absurd and dangerous.
All right, I want to get to Ukraine, but after I ask one more political question, do you think that they have a coherent policy on anything in the Biden administration? I mean, I look at Ukraine, it's always too little, too late for too long. When I look at China, they don't talk the way you talked about the CCP. And when I look at Iran, they gave them billions and billions of dollars, which ended up in Hamas tunnels and Hezbollah rockets. Is there a coherent mastermind behind Biden foreign policy? I don't think it's Joe.
I haven't seen their theory, right? Their global theory for the security of America. I haven't been able to identify it. If you ask her what the common theme in each of those is, it has been to appease and underutilize the power of America to deliver good outcomes for the American people. So whether it's the failure to give long-range munitions to the Ukrainians or provide them even short and medium-range munitions at the scale that they need, now that they're telling the Israelis, you're the problem, not the solution, and the way that they have permitted the Chinese Communist Party not just to fly spy balloons over our country, but to conduct espionage here, to travel across our border, to move fentanyl, to threaten the island of Taiwan. The common theme there, Hugh, I don't know that there's a strategy attached to it, but the common theme is don't upset the apple cart, fear escalation more than victory, and that's a recipe for escalation and disaster.
So I look at DOD. They can't buy anything on time. They've switched over to the frigate, which is good. I hope it's better than the LCS, but they have a recruitment crisis. Why do you think that is? You're a veteran of West Point. You served. You know the deal. Why aren't kids signing up or re-enlisting?
You have a family that has served as well. If you had a young child or frankly, if you're a young kid who's 18 years old thinking about going to the Marine recruiter station, do you want to go serve in a military that is focused on making sure that you can have transgender operations out of state, that has everybody thinking about things not related to combat, right? So much focus on climate change in the Department of Defense, so much focus on diversity and equity and inclusion. I mean, sign me up for diversity in our military. My first tank gunner was someone who was a naturalized American citizen. But when the warfighters lose the focus on warfighting, you can precisely see why young people say, "Nah, if I'm going to do that kind of thing, I'll go do it someplace else. I don't want to go be a sailor or a soldier or serve in our space command. I'll go do something else." If we return the military to its core function of crushing our adversaries and deterring conflict, the kids will come flocking back. They are still patriotic. They will still want to serve you.
Okay, that can be fixed. Can we fix procurement? I really don't. We're running out of weaponry that we need to give to Ukraine and Taiwan and our friends in Israel. We are not building ships at anywhere near the pace that the CCP is. Is it possible even to fix procurement, Mr. Secretary?
It's absolutely possible. We know how to do it. There are pieces of it that are actually functioning where the private sector is helping build out in Ukraine. Private sector is helping the Israelis deliver EWS systems. Lots of good work happening. But the Department of Defense is fundamentally going to have to shift the way it thinks about bringing on new technology, how quickly it can innovate. And then you need the authority, the Department of Defense needs the authority to do that, to appropriate funds against problems, against solutions that will deliver problems not 20 years from now, 100% over budget and 2 years too late, but in real time. It's possible to do, Hugh.
Now, last question. I don't know which boards you serve on or whom you advise, but I think artificial intelligence and supercomputing we can keep our edge if we invest in it. Do you see us investing in it?
Give us a B. The private sector is doing great work. It is still the case that the best, most innovative companies are American companies with engineers working here in the United States across that spectrum. AI, quantum mechanics, cryptography, all the things around securing networks. We're still world class. Our government is slow and hasn't provided the capital needed to get some of these small companies across the chasm so they can grow. And the Chinese Communist Party is deeply focused on it. I do worry about this year. This is a place we've got to put money and focus.